Welcome to Football Never Sleeps, the aspiring to be viral weekly YouTube show all about Notre Dame football, where we ask the hot questions but haven't yet incorporated eating hot wings into the format. My name is Eric Hansen, still in my TV clothes. The other guy in the other box with the words Tyler James under his face is actually Tyler James. Ahead on the show tonight, a depth chart shakeup at Notre Dame with some long-term injuries, some lingering questionable statuses for players, and one coming back from the injured list. We're going to break all that down, how we expect that to shake out. Lots of discussion on the number one quarterback on the roster, Rylie Leonard, and about the other quarterbacks on the roster. We'll talk surges by freshmen like Kennedy Urlacher, recruiting, and we'll work your questions into the discussion, so start loading up the question portal. This is Football Never Sleeps.
All right. Well, regardless if Notre Dame's win over Purdue has given you hope again, it is a good time to be a subscriber to InsideNDSports.com. So give us a try with a 30-day free trial that's exclusive to our YouTube audience. Use promo code NDYT when you sign up to get free access to our premium analysis and recruiting coverage and special access to us over on the Insider Lounge, where we spend a lot of our time and share our inside information first. Make sure you're subscribed to our YouTube channel as well, which is free, but it allows you to get questions in during the show. And thanks to you all who helped us pass the 3,000 subscriber mark. We were able to hit that milestone last week. So thank you very much for everyone for helping out there. Hello to Bob, Eric, Jeff, Gary B, and Ron. We appreciate you guys being here. Like Eric mentioned, fill up the question queue. But first, we'll get into some of the news of the day, particularly Notre Dame's injury news, before we start getting into some of those questions. Eric, Marcus Freeman shared with us today that Viper Jordan Botelho and center Ashton Craig will both be sidelined for the rest of the season due to knee injuries suffered during the Purdue game. Which one of those do you think is a bigger loss for Notre Dame, and who is going to be asked to sort of fill their voids with those guys sidelined?
I would say if there are no further injuries, it's going to be Jordan Botelho. And why I say that is because Boubacar Traore's coming on. I mean, the guy looks like he's going to be a star at some point. But it was great to be able to rotate those two and work Junior Tuihalamaka in there a little bit. And you could kind of bring Logan Thomas, the undersized freshman right now, who's got a load of potential as well, bring him along slowly while he puts on weight. It kind of puts all those other things in fast motion, gives you less room for error. Really, if there were another injury at that position, who you really don't have an obvious person that you could move to Viper to help there. I think center is in good hands. I think Ashton Craig, you can make an argument that he was playing as good a football as anybody on the offensive line. Certainly had a great training camp. You actually get a more experienced player slightly in Pat Coogan and a little bit older. And I think he'll do a good job. But, boy, it was hard to see both of those guys have to leave the field and have their season. And how about you? What do you think, Tyler?
Yeah, I think Botelho is the one that is the bigger loss. I truly think he was playing his best football of his career. And while I do think Traore is capable, the loss of not having Traore as sort of an option off the bench is what's really going to hurt. Like, you could play Botelho and Traore, and they did at times on third down situations that were clearly passing situations. Yeah, you could play both of those guys on the field at the same time. I'm not sure that you're going to do that with Traore and Junior Tuihalamaka, for instance. So I think that's where the drop-off will be most notable. Coogan, he played solid in the game against Purdue in replacing Ashton Craig. We'll see how he can continue to do that forward. It's not a surprise that he should be capable there. I mean, that's where he started his career, was playing some center, and then ended up winning a starting job at the guard position. But is definitely experienced in the center responsibilities, just not in game situations. So we'll see how he grows there after starting all 13 games last season at left guard. He was giving up some ground initially, but usually tended to gain control of the defender he was blocking. So Ashton Craig had some ups and downs at the center position. But I do think it's a loss. I think his mobility is something that you're losing because I think he's a more mobile player than Pat Coogan is. And Notre Dame like to use Ashton Craig as a puller sometimes. I'm not sure that you're probably going to want to do that as much with Pat Coogan out of the center spot.
Okay, and that wasn't the end of the injuries today, right?
No, it's not. Freeman also shared that starting right guard Billy Schrouth will miss multiple weeks with an ankle injury from the Purdue game. How important is it that his replacement is Rocco Spindler? And Rocco started 10 games at right guard last season.
Yeah, and I think he's hungry and ready to go. Marcus praised both Coogan and Spindler for not hanging their heads after getting beaten out in August for the spots that they were fighting for. And again, I tried to watch those guys in the Purdue game. Now, Purdue wasn't doing a whole lot of things right, but I thought Rocco acquitted himself pretty well. And I do feel good about him being in there. He should be playing the best football of his career right now. He's a senior. He was a high pedigree recruit, and I think he's got it in him. It was interesting last year when Ashton Craig and Billy Schrouth came in for Rocco and for the center, whose name is escaping me now, that's at NC State. You're muted, Tyler.
Oh, sorry. Bad time for me to try to help with a muted mic. Zeke Carell.
Well, you wanted to just say it. You wanted to mouth.
Yeah, I was trying to help you. Well, you're supposed to read my lips.
but I actually think Schrouth and Craig played better when they came in as injury replacements than the guys that they were replacing. And I think certainly, Rocco is a guy that I always thought had some really good football in him. So, and I think they practiced enough with the ones in the training camp and in the summer and even in the spring that they have a good feel for those guys on the offensive line. Maybe not in the same spot. Rocco was auditioning at left guard this year, so he and Emil weren't together that much. And Coogan's playing center now, but they do have some reps with those guys. They do have some chemistry with them, so it's not like you're starting from square one. But it'd be great to get Schrouth back.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Schrouth was the offensive lineman I was most impressed with so far this season. So it's certainly a loss to not have him out there. But I did think Rocco Spindler played really well against Purdue. I mean, I think you could argue it was one of the better games of his career. Especially the first drive. You could tell how pumped up he was to get out there. I thought he was really impressive when he first got out there and replacing Billy Schrouth, and then continued to have a pretty good game. Obviously, you're going to have some missed blocks, missteps here or there throughout the game, but I thought he had a pretty good game, and Notre Dame can hope that he can sort of remain steady and hold things up and work well alongside Pat Coogan. And then Emil Wagner to his right, who he hasn't spent time playing with. So it'll be important to see how that chemistry works out with those new guys, but it worked out pretty well in game one against Purdue. Granted, Purdue wasn't doing much playing defense in that game. As it relates to the offensive line, how does this change the expectations that you have for it, Eric? How many more injuries do you think this group can withstand?
Well, it depends where those injuries would happen. I mean, if there was a tackle injury right now, I think it would be really scary. Now, again, those younger tackles are getting more reps. We think that Tosh Baker may or may not be back this week from missing 2 weeks with a shoulder injury. That would build some depth there. But they are running out of bodies pretty quick. I like the depth. I like where they are now, but they need to stay away from whatever the curse was with the women's basketball team last year and just stay healthy at this point.
Yeah, I think how thin the depth is dangerous. Tosh Baker is someone that wasn't able to win either of the tackle spots. how valuable he is. I think he's still your next tackle in. At least he has some playing experience. We did see Sullivan Absher playing left tackle in the Purdue game. He's someone that I do like long term, but wasn't able to find where he could find a role this season as a starter. Gerby Lambert is someone that I'm very high on long term. I think my biggest concern would probably be on the interior if there's another injury, because I think they're less talented at those positions in terms of guys that can step up and play. Now, maybe Sullivan Absher is the next guy at the interior, even though he's maybe the next guy at left tackle too. But I think the interior would be a harder position to lose another guy. So you hope Billy Strauss can get back, and then you have some more depth there with someone having to come out of the starting lineup at that point. So I think it's definitely some concern. I mean, when you think about it, I mean, the three guys that we entered preseason camp, like, okay, these are the three starters on the offensive line for sure, is Billy Strauss, Ashton Craig, and Charles Jagusa, and now none of them are in Notre Dame starting lineup. So a horrible streak of luck for offensive line coach Joe Rudolph, and they'll hopefully can withstand a few weeks and beyond in terms of staying healthy. The last notable injury is to Joshua Burnham, who has been out with an ankle injury. He's questionable again this week. He was questionable last week and did not play against Purdue. If he's borderline ready to go, would you sit him this week against Miami of Ohio?
If he is borderline and you're risking further injury, yes, I would sit him this week. I think Notre Dame, between maybe moving some pieces around, Junior Tui Halamaka maybe playing both sides, or maybe Jason Anye popping back out to the edge and helping at the big end spot, having one of the linebackers play some Viper downs, maybe KVA. I think they have enough to get through this game, and I'm not underestimating Miami. I'm just saying you want him ready to go for Louisville and further in the season. You if there's a risk to injury, I would hold back. If there's not, then go ahead.
Yeah, it's certainly a loss to not have him out there, but I think it could be equally as important to get some experience for Bryce Young this week, and have him get some meaningful reps again against Miami of Ohio after getting some work against Purdue. But I think that depth is something that Notre Dame needs to solidify. And maybe it's Logan Thomas who sees some more action as well between some Viper opportunities, where maybe if Joshua Burnham isn't playing, because I think Burnham can play both sides, there's some opportunities to get some young guys some time out there, because I think it's much more important to have Burnham out there against Louisville than it is against Miami of Ohio. All right, Eric, before we get to some of these questions that our folks have submitted, can you tell them about our friends at Autograph?
I sure can. You can now find Inside ND Sports content on the Autograph app, which is free to download on Android and Apple devices. If you don't know how to do that, I've got 6 grandkids that can help you. The company, co-founded by Tom Brady, believes that devotion should be rewarded and the future of fandom belongs to the fans. There are many cool tools and features in the app, including the daily replay, which summarizes the news from the previous day with links to content you may have missed. You could download the app using the QR code at the bottom of our screen, or call Tyler, or by using the link listed in the video description. From there, go find our content in the Notre Dame community. Make sure you use the referral code INDS. That's INDS, so that Autograph knows we sent you.
I'm just giving everyone the pointing necessary to find the QR codes. So yeah, please check out Autograph if you haven't already. We really enjoyed working with them and seeing the product that they're putting out through the Autograph app and making our content available there. All right, to our questions. Bob Oxnard asks, should Kingston move to Viper?
I don't think so from an every down standpoint or even a regular standpoint. But Bob, I like what you're thinking. I think there are situations where he can play the Viper and where he would be really good. But I think having to defend the run and playing against a tackle, I think he's more useful for you in other places. We saw him in coverage get his first interception. He had career high 7 tackles. I realize his career is only 3 games long. The game before that against Northern Illinois. But I do like him as a part-time guy, filling some of the roles that the Viper does in some of the packages. How about you, Tyler?
Yeah, I think you keep him in that role. I think maybe the reps are increased in that role because you don't have a Viper that you like as much in some situations, and maybe you play Traore and Kingston Viliamu-Asa together in those instances where you would play Traore and Botello together. So I would, it certainly it wouldn't be a move to Viper, but it's a continual and maybe an increase in his role as a pass rush specialist in some situations. And even at times like Jordan Botello, they would move inside sometimes. And I think Kingston can sort of do that as well, and be effective as a pass rusher there. So I don't think you're going to want to put him there on an every down basis, but you could put him in some specific passing situations that could help you out. All right, Ron Robert asks, how likely do you think that Botello will look for a medical exception to play a 6th year?
They're going into the season. There were only three guys that had the COVID exemption year left. Kevin Bauman was one of them, Watts and Tosh Baker. Botello was using his, so you're right. He could apply for it and probably pretty easily get a 6th year. I think he does. I think, he wouldn't have an NFL future without a really good season. I realize Boubacar will probably be the starter there next year, but as much as Notre Dame rotates people, I think they'd find a place for Botello and find a role for him. So I would not be surprised if he applied for the 6th year.
Yeah, it would be tough. I mean, 6 years is a lot of time to spend in college football for anyone. I would have certainly at the outset of his career, I would have never have predicted that Jordan Botello would be someone that would stay at Notre Dame for 6 years.
We didn't even think he was going to be there for one. The way things were going, he got sent home his freshman year during COVID the summer.
Yeah, so I would lean no. Like, he has played a lot at Notre Dame, so it's not like the NFL doesn't have a sense of what he is. Like, certainly he hasn't been able to show the best version of himself for a long period of time. But I would think he would get into an NFL camp, even coming off of the knee injury. So I think there would be an NFL path for him, and I don't know how much more he would improve his stock by coming back for a 6th year, and then also obviously then you risk getting hurt again. So, it was way too early to know. You get a lot to process.
He'll get good advice from the Notre Dame coaches that have connections and so forth too.
Yeah. So I'm sure, like, right now isn't the time where he should be making this decision. Like, he's got to go through this process and figure out a lot of things before he decides on that. But it is nice that he does have the option to do that. That it happened early in the season, and would allow him to get back for another year. All right, both Ron Robert and Bob James, my father, asked about Kennedy Urlacher. Ron Robert says Urlacher looks like a player in short samples. Should he play more, and can he play other positions on defense?
Well, I will answer for Ron, and you can answer for your dad if the answers are different. I'll tell you what, I mean, he caught my eye, and then you see him on social media, and it's kind of even neater when you get to slow it down and see him again. I was skeptical of Kennedy Urlacher coming in, and I had kind of heard that from the recruiting guys. He was a 3-star for a lot of his recruitment, kind of bumped up to 4-star and rivals at the end. Didn't get the bump, I think, from the other services. But he moves fast. He hits hard. I thought, well, maybe a special teams player, and we haven't seen him a lot in coverage. I'm curious how that plays out, what kind of a cover guy he is. But man, I would load him up on special teams. I think Marcus mentioned that today, that he's talked to Marty Biaggi about trying to get Kennedy on more special teams. Kennedy played 23 snaps, which is almost half of Purdue's offensive snaps on Saturday. He played a little bit on special teams. He had 3 tackles and he had a pass breakup, but boy, it felt like he had more. And man, you could kind of hear the thunder when he hit people.
Yeah, the suddenness that he plays with and the instincts that he plays with are obvious. Those were never concerns to me. My question still remains, like, what is he like as an every down safety? And like, would he, like, how does he play basically backwards? Like, how does he play out of a back pedal? How does he play in coverage? Because those are different skills than coming forward and making plays. Because I think he's good at that. He's someone that if he gets big enough, you would wonder, like, man, he could be a pretty interesting rover, or even maybe even a nickel guy if he were skilled enough to play some coverage, which is essentially a rover. Depending on how you want to define it, you could play your rover on the field more if you believe in his coverage skills. So I don't think that's in the cards for Kennedy Urlacher as a freshman, but let's see how he continues to physically develop. And maybe he does have those safety skills that we haven't quite seen yet, or that I'm not certain I've seen yet, in terms of being a good coverage guy, being able to prevent deep balls and stuff like that.
There's a role that Jaden Osbury fills, and fills well, actually, so it'd be hard to bump him. But they have that Aztec position when they go to 6 defensive backs, and
right.
I could see Kennedy playing in that because you move him around, and some of that is pass rush.
Sure. All right. Let's see. Scott Fegan asks, guys, did you see an improvement in Rylie Leonard's passing game? It's great to see him against Purdue. See him run against Purdue, but he has to be able to pass against Louisville and others.
Yeah, I know we're going to get into this a little bit more, so I'll give the shorter answer. I did think I saw improvement in him. I thought he made good decisions. It was his highest pass efficiency ranking since the game just before he got hurt against Notre Dame when he was at Duke. So I liked what I saw. I mean, there's a lot of room for improvement still, but for me, and again, we don't know how good or bad Purdue's pass defense is. They have an All-American and a safety, but I think I was satisfied that I saw some improvement against Purdue.
Yeah, I would agree. I think there was improvement. Was it seismic? No. Was it in the area of throwing the ball deep downfield? No. But he was making good decisions. Was mostly accurate. I think he had a couple balls where I think he probably would like back and could have placed better than he did. But I thought for the most part he played pretty good. I think if it wasn't for the Northern Illinois game, people wouldn't be like second guessing this performance by Rylie Leonard, I don't think. But because of the Northern Illinois game,
second guessing us because of the Northern Illinois game.
Yeah, I mean, everyone's getting second guessed because of the Northern Illinois game. So like I think if you think about it from that perspective, I think it was a perfectly good game for Rylie Leonard. Now, did what he do against Purdue, will what he did against Purdue work against everyone? No. But Notre Dame only needed to beat Purdue on Saturday. It didn't need to beat anyone besides Purdue. And so small growth is better than no growth. It certainly wasn't a backstep by any means. So I liked what Rylie Leonard did for Notre Dame, and to see him out there confident, and to see him out there.
And with 2 shoulders.
Right, with 2 shoulders. Physically capable of playing the position, not afraid from contact. So whatever shoulder issues he's dealing with, I don't think they were showing up on the field, at least. All right. Paul Kinlan asks, of our 3 backup quarterbacks, who do you think has the best arm?
I will still go with CJ Carr here, but I want to say this about Steve Angeli, and not just because he was 6-9 for 100 yards and 2 touchdowns. I've been on record as saying I think CJ Carr will be the starting quarterback next year. I would not count out Steve Angeli ever. All he's done is kind of play above what the expectations are for him. But I do think if you had a contest, CJ Carr would beat the other 2.
Yeah, I think that's probably right. I mean, I don't know. I think Minchie has a pretty good arm too.
I do.
And I don't think Angeli's arm is weak by any means.
Correct.
So
Would you say all three of them have a stronger arm than Ian Book, for example?
maybe I don't know. Maybe I think Angeli and Book are pretty similar. A Book problem, and
a hot dog is a sandwich.
Book's problem is that he wouldn't throw it. Like it was, and that this was the thing that I spent many interviews talking to Tommy Reese about. It's like he can throw it. I've seen him throw the ball down the field. The problem was he wasn't always choosing to do that, and that may be some of Rylie Leonard's issue as well. As we, it's not a lack of physical capability for Rylie Leonard, but I do think that those backup quarterbacks have good arms, but that's not the arm strength is not probably top 3 in terms of characteristics you're looking for when you're trying to decide Notre Dame starting quarterback. Eric Swope says, should we consider this game a case of road rage or awakening?
I love it, Eric. Eric remembers my headline. I think it could end up being both. I don't think we're going to know the answer to the second part of that.
Come on, Eric, tell us now.
For a while. Well, I saw enough in that game where I felt like it would have a sustainable effect. But I was also tripped up by the Northern Illinois game.
Right.
So I don't want to push all my chips in the middle of the table yet, but I would say if you're going to, Tyler's goading me on, Eric, to answer this. So I will say it will end up being both. I do think this team has a playoff roster, and I do think that they will play up to that eventually this season. As long as we don't have another injury day, a whole bunch of injury days like we had on Saturday.
Yeah, I would say more road rage than awakening at this point. And part of it's just because I think Purdue is so bad that it's hard to know what exactly this means for the rest of the season.
Indiana State must be really bad.
Which leads us to the next question. Mike DeVoy asks, is Miami of Ohio a better team than Purdue?
Well, Mike, I decided to go to the Athletics 1 through 134. The NCAA only recognizes 133 in their stats, but there are 134 teams, including a provisional one, playing football this year, and they rank them all every week. The Athletic thinks not only is Miami at number 80 better than number 92 Purdue, they think Miami is better than Florida State 87 and Virginia 82. So I thought that was pretty interesting, and better than Stanford at 91. But not better than Northern Illinois.
I don't know that there's, I guess the best way to put it, there's probably isn't a significant difference between the two teams. I think there are some better players on Purdue's roster, like Dylan Thieneman, who didn't particularly play well, I thought, for Purdue. Is probably better than anyone on Miami's roster. But Miami...
And Purdue didn't have its kicker stolen by Alabama.
Yeah. And Purdue isn't coached by Chuck Martin, so maybe that's holding them back as well. But I think it's pretty. They're probably pretty similar. I think certainly Purdue wants to be better than Miami, Ohio, but I don't know that it would have a good argument in making that it is better than Miami, Ohio. All right, Jeff Stevens asks, how does Marty Biaggi coach up a good practice punter to an effective weapon?
Marcus Freeman was asked that today, and I think it was a pretty long answer, and it was over a couple of questions. And what I boil it down to is maybe Marcus feels like they need to simplify things for him in the games, that he's able to do so many different kinds of punts and was able to show that off when the pressure wasn't on this summer and in fall camp. Then he gets in the game and the rush is coming at him, and it's way different than anything he's experienced in Australian rules football. And so maybe just skinning it down to very basic things so that he can show out. Right now, there are 72 punters that have enough attempts to qualify, and he's 70th. And then from a net punting standpoint, Notre Dame is 94th out of the 133, the NCAA chart. So we saw some really amazing punts from him. And you talk to his teammates, and there's incredible things he did this summer and when we weren't in some of the training camp practices. But again, it's getting that to translate to the game, and simplifying seems to be the way to do that.
Yeah, I think we are living through the concern that you would have when you bring someone who's never played American football before onto a college football field and ask them to perform at the highest level. I certainly think the talent is there. It's not necessarily showing up. The talent of him not punting it into the end zone is showing up, but they have to unlock much more to his game, and like you said, making it simple. Even the idea of like getting him more used to not just punting 20 times in a row and then you're done, like that's your punt period, punting once every 20 minutes that like you will in a game, so you're used to sort of coming out there cold and having to deliver in your one rep is something that is different. Like even when he's training back in Australia, I'm sure, I don't know how much he would do of that, because that seems like that would be like a colossal waste of time if you're training like that. But Notre Dame can figure out ways to mimic that in practice and make sure that he's following through on everything that he knows how to do, because we've seen it. Like before he got to America, we didn't know, like we had only heard about it more than anything, but we did see it in practice. Like he did have some
comically good some days.
Yeah, it's like, oh my goodness, like everyone's over 50, they all have good hang time, but that has not been what showed up on the game field on Saturdays.
There's a follow from Ennie Davis at the bottom of the screen, and he asked about rugby punting. Marcus went through kind of the inventory of everything he can do, and that's one of the things he can do. And if that were the best of what he could do, perhaps, but I don't think you get the hang time with that. I think they just like the spiral punt right now, and then they can work in those other variations.
Yeah, and I would think if you do the rugby style punt, it would require changes to your protection for blocking for him to make sure that you're giving him the room to do that. So that would be, it would impact more people to make that change on a consistent basis. Yeah, I mean, if that's he can do that most consistently best, I think you should consider it. But the stuff that we're talking about that we saw, like they were traditional punts that he was booming and making look impressive. So it's up to Marty Biaggi to figure out how to get him to execute when needed the most. Gary B also responded here. Sorry, that was my pause. I was reading it and making you guys all listen to silence.
I thought making a frowny face. Go ahead.
I thought the comment Marcus Freeman said about Rendell was so weird. What else do they make him do but kick?
Well, I'm sure that they've gone through the scenarios in case there's low snaps, what he needs to do, whether he's going to run. I would imagine they have some kind of fake with him. I mean, he is a very good athlete. He's 6'6", 225 pounds, but it's all the different kinds of punts,
right?
End over ends, the rugby style, and then the directional punts, and so the pooch
directional getting it to spin backwards so it doesn't roll into the end zone. That's what he's talking about doing it all. That you can do all the different kinds of punts.
So to me,
it's not that they're having throwing a lot of passes out there, and that's what they needed to stop having him do.
Yeah, it was weird only because when you score 66 points, you shouldn't have to punt very often.
Yeah, it is kind of funny that we're talking about the punter when the offense was scoring so much, but I think it's an understandable concern after 3 games. Eric Swope asked, what backup stood out the most to you in the second half of the game?
I think I mentioned Kennedy Urlacher. I'm trying to go through them all because there were so many, because they got into the deep reserves, not just the rotational players. Tyler, if you've got one off the top of your head, I'm trying to go through in my mind. I mean, because the The linebackers are rotational guys. If you want to say Boubacar Traore isn't technically a starter, but that's cheating. Same with Kingston Viliamu-Asa.
I mean,
we're talking about somebody that I know Marcus was really impressed with Leonard Moore, who played a lot of reps, played 21 reps in Benjamin Morrison's place. Garby Lambert got bouquets today playing right tackle behind Emil Wagner in a non-injury related situation.
Yeah, you could probably name every defender because the defense was playing well, even with Purdue.
I'll tell you, I mean, we have a segment later, but I'll blow my cover now. Eli Reardon had a good game. He didn't start, and I thought Eli came to play on Saturday.
Yeah, you could even mention Kevin Bauman as someone you wanted to highlight for getting his first career touchdown catch after back-to-back ACL injuries the last 2 seasons. So I think there are a number of guys that you could point to that were impressive in various ways and for different reasons on Saturday. And Scott asked another question, which is similar to one of the ideas we had for later, but we can get to it now. Who surprised you the most on offense and defense?
Surprised, because I think we have impressed later. So surprised. I don't know that I was surprised that Rocco and Coogan did well when they came in. Again, with as many reps as those guys took with the ones over time. I thought maybe Keaton Young surprised me a little bit just because I haven't used him. I was surprised to see Peter Jones in the game because Tyler thought he saw him out of uniform. He only played 3 snaps after the 2-minute timeout.
Yeah, I could have sworn when they were out in warmups and everything, he was just one of the many guys that was just wearing a jersey and not shoulder pads. And so Eric texted me, he's like, "Hey, they said Peter Jones played the last 3 snaps." I was like, I could have swore I mean, maybe I was wrong. Maybe I don't know what Peter Jones looks like, but I was pretty confident that he wasn't dressed. Maybe they let him dress later on to get him a few reps. But some guys that I was going to mention, Jaden Harrison. I thought he did some nice things. 2 catches for 47 yards. Had the nice catch on the sort of slot fade from Steve Angeli in the second half. Kennedy Urlacher we've talked about already, but just to see him doing it at the college level was nice to see. I already said Rocco Spindler played one of the better games of his career, so I think you have to say that's a surprise to some extent. I mean, you didn't know he was going to play at all, and for him to play as well as he did is a little bit surprising. So
I got some NIL email from him.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, they were looking for good timing on that because now's the time that people are going to want to talk about Rocco Spindler. All right, I think those are all our questions. So let me try to get to some of the things that we haven't already discussed based on the comments or questions submitted to us. Marcus Freeman was obviously asked about James Rendell, so I don't know that we want to talk about that anymore. But when he was asked about getting more passing yards out of Rylie Leonard, Marcus Freeman said that they're not looking for stats out of Rylie Leonard. Do you think that's a valid stance? And what is fair to expect from the passing game this coming weekend?
I think to a certain extent that is a valid stance. I understand why Marcus said that because, I think a lot of fans want to see Rylie chuck it down the field and that kind of thing. And I think there's some validity to that. But what I think the game that Marcus and the coaches are playing, they're playing a long game and a short game. As we see against Northern Illinois, you need to take advantage of a team's weaknesses and you need to attack those weaknesses. And sometimes those aren't the same of what your long-term plan is of getting Rylie Leonard to be a better passer. If Notre Dame gets to the playoff and they make the playoff, and I wrote about this in my analysis today, they are going to see 4 really good pass efficiency defense teams in a quarterfinal game. He would have to be able to throw the ball down the field. He would have to be a much better passer than he is right now. But when you're playing Miami, Ohio this week, Miami has the 3rd best pass efficiency defense that Notre Dame will face the rest of the season. and they're 47th. They're 109th in rush defense. So it's a little bit silly to just chuck it against Miami every down when you can win the game and theoretically, I'm saying theoretically, win the game by attacking Miami's weakness against the run. But I think incrementally over the year, it doesn't have to be this week. Rylie Leonard has to keep getting better every week so that when you do need him to be a better passer, he's going to be ready for that. But again, from week to week, when they play Stanford, the script is opposite. Stanford is 10th in the country in rush defense and 109th in pass efficiency defense. Throw it all you want on October 12th.
Yeah, and I wonder how much like some of those stats, like are you high in rushing defense because you're just so bad at passing defense that teams don't even try to run against you? Because I think some of that can play into that, especially this early.
Right, and yeah, the stats are a little bit skewed this early in the season, but my point isn't to play to those stats. My point is that game plans aren't one size fits all, and the long-term game and the short-term game aren't necessarily the same thing.
Yeah, it's not. Like I said earlier, like you're only trying to beat who you're playing. You don't have to. Everything in the game doesn't have to be okay. This is what it would be like if we were playing in the college football playoff. So you would like to see continued improvement, which like what we both agreed that Rylie Leonard did improve this past week. You'd like to see maybe some more passes thrown downfield. They did take a couple shots, and this past week, and maybe they'll take a couple more of those. It's tough when you're having so much success running the ball and you have running backs that can break 50-yard runs, 70-yard runs. It's like you're just as likely to have a big play in the running game as you are in the passing game, and there's much less risk when it comes to running the football than it is passing the football. So I would expect Notre Dame to sprinkle in some more passes down the field to try to get Rylie Leonard some confidence in being able to do that, but also not sort of abandon what's the best way to make sure it wins against Miami, Ohio soundly.
Right. Going into the Purdue game, and we might have talked about this, Tyler. I forget who I talk to all the time, but there was an expectation at least that Purdue would probably load the box against Notre Dame, and they would bring a lot of pressure. And that's something that they did last year, and that's something they did some against Indiana State. So the game plan certainly early was a quicker passing game and having Rylie Leonard throw on the move. It wasn't, hey, let's have him take a 5-step drop and survey the field and go through his progressions. So again, you have to play to the game plan.
Yeah, and like it's funny because I as silly as it seems, I do think like one pass would make the world of difference in certain situations. Like the second interception that Rylie Leonard threw against Northern Illinois, if he doesn't throw that, like people aren't out for Rylie Leonard's neck. If he completes that deep ball pass that he tried to throw to Bo Collins, but Anthony Knapp got blocked into him when he was trying to, or knocked into him while he was trying to throw the ball deep, and that's a touchdown pass, people are going to give Rylie Leonard a little more slack, I think. But that didn't happen, and on we go to the next week without Rylie Leonard having a touchdown pass. All right, a couple questions I see here in the chat. What about that number 37 on punt return?
That's my guy, Max Hurleman, the transfer from Colgate. I think Notre Dame has found its punt returner. I like him there. Jaden Greathouse is kind of turning into John Goodman II. And I meant John Goodman, the Notre Dame football player, not the guy that was Roseanne's husband. And then, Jordan Faison, I'm not sure how soon he gets back into that coming off an injury. Eventually, they may want to try him there. But Max kind of reminds me, has a little Tommy Zibikowski in him and being kind of fearless without being totally reckless. I like Max back there.
Yeah, we didn't have a lot to like being locked into in the second half. And I was joking in the press box that Max Hurleman does not care if someone tries to hurt him when he's catching the ball on a punt return, that he's getting all these reps in it as he can because he's got an opportunity there. He doesn't care if it's his last play. He would be fine with that. Now, I think he would probably play maybe a little more buttoned up in a tight situation than he was playing against Purdue. but certainly he was playing with confidence and was trying to make plays out there. And you got to admire him going out there and playing sort of fearless at a position that I think is really hard to play fearlessly because it can be a scary proposition.
He's on some other special teams too. He's a nice player, nice pickup from the portal for a walk-on too.
Gary B says, how much are you both hoping Northern Illinois goes undefeated? I'm assuming they will be among the highest rated teams we play, ?
Well, according to The Athletic right now, they have Northern Illinois at number 21, which is higher than everybody, including Louisville. I have Louisville higher than Northern Illinois.
Yeah, I was going to say, why are we consulting The Athletic? You do a top 25 poll. Come on. I understand for Miami, Ohio, you're not ranking those guys.
Okay, well, I mean, USC is the team I have highest ranked on my ballot, and then I have Louisville next, and I have Northern Illinois above Texas A&M. And it'll be interesting. We're going to find out pretty soon if they're staying power with Northern Illinois. And that's what I talked about. You know, you have to build on that if you're Northern Illinois. They have Buffalo this week. They can't lay an egg with them. But then they go to NC State, which was a preseason top 25 team. They're not in the top 25 now. Mm-hmm. Going to Raleigh, and I'm really interested to see how that game turns out for Northern Illinois. And if they go undefeated, that would be really interesting because they would be in the playoff. They would be the highest ranked group of 5, I would imagine. I know Memphis will be in that conversation as well early, and maybe somebody else, Boise or somebody like that, gets in the conversation. But Memphis after beating Florida State, although, again, everybody's beating Florida State these days.
Yeah, I think Notre Dame fans would certainly be happy to see that. It would make for a great story. Marcus Freeman would probably appreciate that, even if you wouldn't admit that.
He could give Thomas Hammock some coaching advice.
Maybe Marcus Freeman.
Here's how we beat NC State. It was concession stand hot dogs during the lightning delay.
Yeah, make sure you have access to concession stand hot dogs. Yeah, that's a key. Make sure Thomas Hammock, if you're watching, make sure you know that. Yeah, it would be fascinating to see if Northern Illinois could do that. I would be a little bit surprised if they're able to do that, but they looked good against Notre Dame. I think they've been feeling themselves a little bit, so we'll see how they handle success. And they come off a bye week; they had even more time to sort of soak in that success. So I know if I were a betting man, I would not be laying a lot of money on Northern Illinois because they're in prime position for a letdown. We'll see if they can live up to the high expectations that they've set for themselves moving forward. All right. Eric, on the topic of Northern Illinois, Marcus Freeman was pretty straightforward today when asked how Notre Dame can handle success this week better than it did prior to the Northern Illinois game. His answer was the preparation, the mindset, the mentality, and that was his answer. Stopped after that. Do you have confidence that Marcus Freeman can sense that and would be able to adjust for that in the middle of a week?
Well, we're going to find out. I would have said yes before the Northern Illinois game, so I don't want to jump and say yes too quickly. Look, he was asked that question 3 times in different ways on Saturday. Then he kind of got asked about it today. Pete Byrne had a question that was kind of similar, and I thought Pete got a lot better answer to it. And I thought it wasn't a word salad. Marcus said, we need to learn lessons when we win, not just when we lose. And I like that answer. And we'll see. I mean, I think this team right now, my read on it, and we'll talk to players and coordinators tomorrow night, but my read on it is that they did learn from this, and that, there is also this, we've got adversity to overcome. Their Twitter hates us. There's injured players that they have to make up for and that they're playing for. Boubacar Traore dedicated the rest of his season to Jordan Botelho on Saturday. So, there is a lot of emotion, and I know that they understand they still have a lot to play for. Just boil it down to a week at a time and not think about the big picture too much. But I'm confident, but I'm not. Again, I'm keeping a few chips away from the middle of the table because I got burned. I don't have the same, feel that some people do that put frowny faces on our Facebook posts still, but I'm fairly confident.
Yeah, I don't think you can be wholly confident, and it seems like people are trying to, in asking Marcus Freeman all these questions about it, they're trying to make themselves feel confident moving forward, or figure out if they should be confident moving forward. And I don't know that there's an answer that exists that Marcus Freeman could say that would be like, okay, yep, he understands what happened there. It was X, Y, and Z. He could point to it, because I don't think he's been pretty blunt with, like, if he knew about it, he wouldn't have let it happen. Like, it's not like he wanted it to go that way. I think coaching is way harder than people give it credit for. Like, it's, you don't always know. You can have all these great sounding quotes leading up into the week. Like, you need to.
We got a coach in the peanut gallery today. Ask your dad.
I don't know if he's still here. We'll see if he give us some advice. But it's you have to just keep pushing forward and try to do the right things. But like you said, what he said about learning from a win in as well as a loss, like he said that after the Texas A&M game too. Like, there are things in this game that we can correct, that we need to get better on. And he liked it that was the case, and it just didn't happen. So I don't really know if and how we will get fully confident in a Marcus Freeman led team going into games like this. I think we're all just going to have to ride the roller coaster. And for Notre Dame's sake, you hope that there's not the big dips, and everyone's stomach feels good. All right. I had a few personnel related questions, Eric, based on the Purdue game and moving forward. Jaden Greathouse, Notre Dame's wide receiver, played only 12 snaps against Purdue. Is there a reason for concern there?
Well, I'll tell you, if I had gotten a second shot at the microphone today, because it was a short press conference, that was on my list, and why KK Smith got 43 reps. The fact that he was returning punts didn't lend me to believe it was injury related or necessarily even performance related, that he just got into a rotation where they wanted to play some other players, and he just ended up only getting 12 snaps. So I'm not concerned at this point. If it happens again this week, then yeah, my hand will be raised and I'll be asking that question.
Yeah, I think it was sort of a combination of things with Notre Dame wanting using some more 2 tight end formations, which takes the slot off the field, and then they didn't necessarily need him in the second half. So I think they probably just took it easy on Jaden Greathouse. And at least that's my belief at this point. We'll see if there's anything else to that. And I just think he's extremely valuable to this offense. So I would be surprised if he's not a key component of it moving forward. Bryce Young played 21 snaps against Purdue. How much do you think he'll play against Miami of Ohio?
If you told me one way or the other Josh Burnham was or wasn't playing,
right,
I would say if Josh isn't playing, I think you could see him play 30 snaps, because again, what Notre Dame was able to do a little bit was move Boubacar Traore from one side to the other until Jordan Botelho got hurt. They can't really afford to do that anymore. So I would think Bryce will get more reps. RJ Oben, who started again, only got 16 after getting 11 the week before. And from what, in my question to Marcus today, it sounded like he was pretty happy with the way Bryce played. So I'm going to say 30. And then if Burnham plays, maybe a little less than that, but I still think they want to get a look at Bryce Young and the flow of the game. I mean, if it's a nail biter, white knuckler, then maybe Bryce doesn't play as much. But if it is somewhere between Purdue and Northern Illinois, a happy medium there, I think we'll see a lot of Bryce Young, because I think they feel like he's ready to show what he can do, and they want to see what that looks like.
Yeah, I think you're probably right there with those figures. I think this is a good opportunity for Bryce Young to get some opportunities. Well, that was a very poorly spoken sentence, but Bryce Young should get some chances.
But you said it with a smile. That's
to continue to play. Here's Bob James chiming in. You play to win. You play the games to win. No one prepares to lose. In my 33 years of coaching, I never took the sideline thinking we were going to lose. So there you go. Okay. Bob Alvey, since we were talking about Vipers.
And Tyler thought the same thing about every one of his dad's games.
Is Preston Zinter too small to move to Viper to help with the depth?
Bob, I actually like that question a lot. I don't know that coaching staff would consider that. I think he's too small to be an every down Viper. Could he help there some? I don't know if he has the burst, but I like his instincts. It's surprised me that unless he's not healthy, that he hasn't played, especially Saturday. I thought, did he even play? He didn't. I did the snap count, so he didn't play. So I'm a little surprised he didn't get on the field, which makes me wonder if he's not healthy. They're only kind of obligated to list the players in the two deeps of who's not available. I think I'm trying to still learn all the rules about that.
They do list a number of guys. They're mostly walk-ons that are out.
Yeah. I also think Bodie Cahoon at 240 and maybe 6'3" may be a guy that they could try there since he's not getting any play right now. But again, you don't want to make your linebacker core too thin either. He did not make his debut on Saturday. They kind of kept the linebackers in. Teddy Rizak did play, but he played on special teams. He didn't play linebacker in the game.
Yeah, I would say Zinter's probably a little bit too small. He's 6'2", 235. Like right now, maybe if long term, if that's something you wanted to build him into, I think you could potentially do that. So I don't know that I see that. And as it relates to like him not playing against Purdue, I don't like we were talking about Peter Jones wasn't dressed at least we believe wasn't dressed at the beginning of the game, ended up playing. Maybe Preston Zinter wasn't necessarily on the travel roster, and so he was one of the guys that wasn't dressed too. We don't. I don't remember what the rules are for that anymore. Like, because I think at one point you could only travel a certain amount of guys. So I don't know what his status was at. And they used to release like a travel roster prior to games, and they don't do that anymore either.
Yeah, they did used to do that.
Paul Kinlan asked, who will be the leading receiver, most catches by season's end?
I think Bo Collins gets the most opportunities. This was the first game he didn't have the most snaps among the wide receivers. KK Smith actually did, but Bo was second. I'm going to go with Bo. At the beginning of the season, I think I said Jaden Greathouse, but I think I'm going to shift since I'm getting the second opportunity to change my pick, I'll go with Bo Collins.
Yeah, I would probably stick with Greathouse for now, because I think there's especially with where the passing game is at, I think there's easier throws for Jaden Greathouse to catch than there can be at times for Bo Collins to catch. And I'm interested, I think Mitchell Evans might still make a run at defending his title as he's starting to round into form. I think he's looked pretty good in his limited opportunities, and he's got to be a guy that Rylie Leonard's going to want to get the ball to because he seems pretty dependable. And even when he's covered, he seems like he's able to come down with a catch. All right. Chris W. asked, has there been any recruiting news? So I figured I could transition into a little bit of a recruiting update here. The biggest news is as it relates to Notre Dame's search for wide receivers. There's mostly three guys to know right now. Two that we've talked about previously, Jalen Cooper, who's committed to SMU. He's in the San Antonio area. General Manager Chad Bowden went to see him last week. Antavius Richardson is committed to USF. He's out of Greenville, Georgia. He's looking to get up for an official visit of this coming weekend for Notre Dame. So we'll see him continue to be a name to watch moving forward. And then Isaiah Mizell is the new name to know a guy out of Orlando, Florida. Chad Bowden went to see him as well, or is working to see him as well. And he's planning to get up later in the month for the Louisville game. So those are the three names to know at receiver moving forward. Jeff Stevens mentions Deuce Knight by trying not to mention Deuce Knight. Deuce Knight still is not committed to Auburn. He still is a Notre Dame commit. So we'll see if that continues to remain the same. There's sort of a fight right now, I think, to get him on campus for Auburn or Notre Dame. Not this coming weekend, but the weekend after that, which would be the Louisville game for Notre Dame. And I believe Auburn is hosting Oklahoma for that weekend, if my memory serves me. So that's where things are going. Chris mentioned he got hurt. Yes, he was hurt. My understanding is a minor injury. I don't have a lot of details right now, but he did get removed from his game this past weekend. Those are the big things to know. And Framo and Nathaniel Owusu-Boateng remain the top targets at linebacker, and I still think Notre Dame's in good shape with them. I think the idea would be that Framo could potentially be committed before Owusu-Boateng is ready to make a decision, and I think Notre Dame would still take both, so it doesn't necessarily matter when they make a decision, but in terms of when you expect decisions, I think there's a better chance of Framo deciding during the season than Owusu-Boateng at this point.
And I did not have Auburn on my ballot this week.
Oh, no. We'll have to see how Deuce Knight feels about that. All right. I don't know if there's any other questions we've missed. What else do we have on the timeline here? Do we want to get into anything else? You talked about giving away your idea earlier with the expectation game, Eric. Which three Notre Dame players most surpassed your expectations against Purdue?
I said Rylie, Leonard, given the shoulder reports, Kennedy Urlacher, and Eli Raridon. How about you?
I said Urlacher, Bauman. I mentioned both those guys, and Jaden Harrison. I thought they did some nice things. Did you come up with players who fell short of your expectations?
I did. R.J. Oben,
yep,
Riley Mills, and Jalen Sneed. Jalen is still struggling with the tackling.
Yeah, I went with Oben. Bo Collins just having 2 catches for 9 yards. Like, I don't know that that's all his fault, but I thought he would have a better game than he did. And he
needs more rapport with the other quarterbacks. He didn't anticipate them coming in.
Yeah. And I didn't think Anthony Knapp played particularly well at left tackle. I mentioned earlier he got knocked.
Well, he stayed healthy
into Rylie Leonard for the deep ball attempt to Bo Collins, but Anthony Knapp didn't necessarily continue to improve. I thought, not that I'm think it's a major concern, but it just wasn't his best game against Purdue. All right. Well, I think that's going to be it for us tonight. We appreciate everyone tuning in. Regardless if Notre Dame's win over Purdue has given you hope again, it's a good time to be a subscriber to InsideNDSports.com. So make sure you give us a try with a 30-day free trial. That's exclusive to our YouTube audience. Use the promo code NDYT when you sign up to get free access to our premium analysis and recruiting coverage and special access to us on the Insider Lounge, where we spend a lot of our time, share our inside information first. And you don't have to wait till later in the week or next week to ask us a question on an audio or visual format. Make sure you're subscribed to us here on the YouTube channel, which is also free, but it allows you to get questions in during the show. So if you were able to take advantage of that today, we appreciate that. I don't know what's going on with Mr. Messi here, but he's absolutely ruining the chat here at the end. So we got to get out of here. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, like I mentioned, but thanks to everyone getting us over the 3,000 subscriber mark. Our YouTube schedule for the week will be Inside ND Sports podcast uploaded on Thursday. Place your bets on Friday. Then Eric and I will share our post-game takeaways late Saturday night. And then make sure you check out all of our content over on InsideNDSports.com. And hopefully this leads to another Notre Dame victory, so we have more happy commenters next week. All right, have a good week.
Thanks, everybody.